Hi friends, and welcome to my PvP edition of What Class Should You Play. In this video, I'm going to give you a quick and concise overview of all the classes in the game, including the ones that aren't going to be out at launch for EU and NA, so that you can get a good idea of what class might be right for you. This is going to be from a 3v3 team deathmatch perspective, and a huge shout out to all the content creators that have allowed me to use their footage. Links for them will all be in the description below. And also, before we get into it, I do stream right here on the YouTube channel as well as on Twitch, and link for that will be in the description below. We've also got our community Discord with lots of helpful links and guides, as well as an amazing community there, including PvP builds. So if you want to go straight in and have that, then it's all there and available for you. And as always, guys, a like and a sub with the bell notification on would always be appreciated. But let's get right into it. So starting with the Berserker, in PvP, the Berserker is a melee DPS that acts as like an opportunist class. Finding some key times in a match, like an opponent knockdown with no roll, allows the Berserker to get off its long animation but very hard-hitting skills to deal extreme damage and have some really feel-good moments during a match. Because the class is on the slower side, however, being a beefy warrior with its long animations and high cooldown skills means that missing them can be quite impactful to your performance. Also, with it being slower, it's a lot harder to catch out those classes that are more mobile and are able to kite you, so it can struggle against them. With its long animations, the Berserker in the higher ranks of PvP can be a bit predictable, as its attacks can be a bit telegraphed, so it can be punished there. And also, the high mana costs of its skills does mean that, as well as the long cooldowns, you go through these stages of having most of your skills on cooldown and having like run out of mana, so being able to balance that is really important for a Berserker. The class does, however, have some of the biggest AoEs and also has a good amount of super armors, especially in its high damage skills, so not only do you hit very hard, but you're also really hard to interrupt. So if you like to have big AoEs and hard-hitting skills that are very well protected and don't mind the slower paced combat with long cooldowns, then this class could be for you. In summary, long animation, high cooldown skills, average mobility, predictable at higher ranks, big AoEs and very high damaging skills, potential mana issues, reasonably tanky, and a great amount of super armors. Moving to the Gunlancer, in PvP, this class is more of a very tanky melee support that thrives at saving their team with lots of tools to peel off your enemies from your teammates, and is also just very disruptive to the enemy team. The class also has a ton of super armors, making it very difficult to actually interrupt what you're doing, and when you use your shield identity skill, you take a move speed penalty, but you gain super armor for all of your skills, which is very hard for a lot of classes to deal with if they're focusing you. The class also has a very nice combo, allowing you to get off a massive amount of damage with your burst cannon skill if you can pull it off in PvP, which will always feel super satisfying. Not only is the class pretty much the tankiest class in PvP, but also has the shortest cooldown from its spacebar dash in the game of about 5 seconds. However, remember with Gunlancer that your spacebar dash jumps you backwards. While being super tanky, the class does suffer from being very slow and clunky, making it very hard to engage with against very mobile classes, so if they choose to ignore you, you can feel a little helpless at times. So if you want to be a super tanky class that has a focus on being defensive while supporting and peeling for your teammates, and don't mind a slower class, then Gunlancer might just be for you. In summary, a very tanky support style class, tons of super armors, a nice burst damage skill, backwards jump, spacebar dash, very slow and clunky, thrives at being defensive, but can be kited quite easily. Moving to the Destroyer, this is a class that is very much a melee enabler in PvP, with its huge gravity hammer making opportunities for your teammates and yourself to deal damage, and also acting as a bit of a solid wall in the arena with its massive AoEs and the ability to stack up enemies, allowing for some really big wombo combos. It's important to note though that this class will not be available at launch for EU and NA at the time of recording this video. Because they have some of the highest amounts of super armors in the game, they are also a class that is very hard to stop and interrupt once they get going, and also have a skill that not only gives them a shield, but they also take about 90% reduced damage for 8 seconds, which also makes you completely immune to knockups, making you feel quite godlike in this time. If fighting against one, you'll have to hard CC them or kite them to get around this. While the class is super tanky, it does suffer a little bit like the Gunlancer from being a bit slow, but while it does have some gap closing skills, they tend to have a bit of a wind up time and will often have you trying to predict where the enemies are going to try and hit them, which makes them easy to dodge sometimes. So if you like a class that has a ton of super armors, as well as basically a god mode skill for 8 seconds, has some huge AoEs, and works great at enabling your team and don't mind being a bit slower, then Destroyer might just be for you. So in summary, not available at EU and NA launch, very tanky melee DPS, tons of super armors, a team enabler, it's a bit sluggish, a god mode skill, and huge AoEs. Moving to the Paladin, in PvP, this is an aggressive support offering team shields as well as a skill that can reduce incoming damage in an area to your teammates by 70%, which can be game changing if timed correctly. Supports are often considered S tier by most people in PvP because of how strong shields are, and while you can go down a more DPS build for Paladin, in higher ranked tiers it's generally considered significantly less effective than a more supportive build. So as well as offering damage reduction and shields, the Paladin has access to a lot of knockups with some surprising range and works really well supporting his team while also dishing out some good damage. It can be difficult to carry a team with damage though as a Paladin, but never underestimate how effective saving a teammate from huge burst damage is, allowing your team to turn and engage around. One of the main problems with Paladin though is a big lack of super armors in its meta build, and not too much mobility, meaning it can be hard to get away, and you can also be knocked around a lot and interrupted quite easily. Paladins do become quite dangerous however when they're in their identity. This gives their sword skills higher damage and increased range, which is very strong and often catches people unaware. You'll enjoy Paladin if you like to support, but with an aggressive playstyle, focusing on getting involved in the combat rather than holding back behind your team. In summary, an aggressive support, considered S tier by many, has team shields and damage reduction, lots of knockup skills, a lack of super armors, easy to interrupt and chase down, and high damage when identity is on. Moving on to the fighters, we start with the Wardancer. This is an opportunist pure melee DPS class with very low cooldowns and a fast in and out approach to PvP, relying on fast combos to deal your damage and defensive buffs for your team. With no huge individual skills that deal damage bar your ultimate, knocking up enemies and juggling them in the air with small hitboxes and precise combos is how you get your damage off before rushing out to reset your skills and re-engaging. Also being a very mobile class, the Wardancer can feel very engaging in PvP, and you'll always feel like you can do something. However, this can run you into mana issues if you're spamming too much. With all of this, the Wardancer does suffer from a big lack of super armors. It can be punished very easily if caught out, and you can also be peeled off quite easily if you don't dodge quick enough, so bear this in mind. It's a super mobile, engaging, and fast-paced martial artist style class, and this will be perfect for someone who doesn't mind not having much defense but wants a quick in and out combo style gameplay with lots of knockups to deal damage. In summary, a pure melee DPS, small AoE with low cooldown skills, very mobile, fast-paced in and out combo style gameplay, could get mana issues, it has defensive team buffs, but has a lack of super armors. Next up we have the Striker, and this is the male version of the Wardancer, but does have a few small differences, mainly being that it has an extra super armor skill and is generally considered a more aggressive version of the Wardancer because it doesn't have that team defensive buff, and it also doesn't really run into mana issues. I won't dig too much deeper into this because there isn't much more to say on top of the Wardancer, but if you want a class that is super mobile, has lots of combos, and has a fast-paced in-and-out combat style while being able to dash from target to target, then Striker could be for you. Remember as well that it will have a different ultimate from the Wardancer. In summary, pure melee DPS class, small AoE and low cooldown skills, very mobile, fast-paced in-and-out combat style, an extra super armor compared to Wardancer, generally considered more aggressive than the Wardancer as well. Next up we have the Scrapper, another melee DPS class. The Scrapper is a real rushdown character and can stick to targets like glue, with very high mobility and fast traveling skills that also knock up and have low cooldowns. The Scrapper has been described as a bully type class that does have access to more AoEs than the Wardancer and more super armors, as well as hard hitting burst skills to deal huge damage. The class does suffer from needing a lot of setup time though, as its big damage skills are not very quick, so you'll need to work on knocking targets down, let them roll, and then chase them down again to knock them down, and then do your big damage skills. So the Scrapper does have to work quite hard to get its damage out, but when you do hit, it hits really hard. However, these skills do leave you quite vulnerable as you're stationary for most of them, so you can be quite easily interrupted. However, because of her kit, Scrapper is actually a good jeweler class, so you can do quite well in 1v1s as you can dodge quite a lot due to her being able to use her spacebar dash twice, but this does put it on a higher cooldown and you can also keep knocking your opponents down quite a bit. Remember as well, with the Scrapper, you'll have to manage her identity by using yellow skills to give you green resource to be able to use your harder hitting skills, but this isn't overly hard to get used to. So if you like a very mobile class with fast hitting skills and don't mind working a bit harder to get your damage off than other classes, then Scrapper might just be for you. So in summary, it's a rushdown melee DPS, very mobile and low cooldown skills, good amount of super armors, lots of knockdowns, a decent jeweler, but needs some setup time. Next up we have the Soulfist. Now this is an all-rounder hybrid type class with both melee and long range skills, as well as some great mobility, and can actually act as a bit of a pseudo support. The range skills that she has access to, like a stun, are very good at peeling and helping your team out, as well as a very nice team damage reduction buff. You have to manage her identity going up through her stages, and most people tend to ignore her first power-up stage and go straight to stage 2, giving her great damage and energy control, allowing you to get your skills off and deal good damage. But when you go into your final power-up stage, however, the Soul Master has some of the highest burst damage and is extremely deadly. Even though this mode doesn't last too long, making some good plays while in this stage is going to make you feel very powerful, and it's very fun to play. However, once this is worn off, you'll go into a phase where you'll be waiting for your identity to come back up, and this is where you can be punished. Your damage will be very low, but also your energy control will be super low, and this is where it's better to back off and become more of a support role. With all of this, she does suffer from a bit of a lack of super armors though, so can also be punished there, and the Soulfist would be perfect for someone who wants a hybrid style class, doesn't mind micromanaging her identity stages, and can cycle through this push and pull offense and defense playstyle that she has. In summary, a hybrid class, great mobility, need to micromanage her identity, a kind of pseudo support, big and small damage phases, great range peels, but has a lack of super armors. Next up, we got the Lance Master. Now this could be called the Glaivier as well, but this is a melee rushdown DPS class that actually has access to some range skills, as well as being one of the strongest jewelers in the whole game, and also has a weapon swap mechanic. However, important to note that she will not be available at launch for EU and NA at the time of making this video. All of her skills do decent damage with fast and flashy animations, and she also has two main skills for her burst damage, a dragon swing and a range type spear throw, so learning to hit these is very important. The Lance Master's kit also enables her to be a great all-rounder class, being strong at everything she does, with high damage, fantastic mobility, access to range, big AoEs. However, she only has one super armor in her meta build, making her susceptible to being knocked up. The Lance Master would be great for someone who likes a fighter style class, doesn't mind a weapon swap mechanic, and he wants access to a great all-round kit, making her a formidable opponent in PvP. In summary, not available at launch for EU and NA, a melee rushdown DPS, great jeweler, great mobility, great damage, big AoEs, only one super armor generally, and a weapon swap mechanic. Moving to the gunners, the first one we have is the Deadeye. Now the Deadeye has a fantastic kit in PvP, with lots of super armors, outstanding mobility, as well as long and short range skills, making it feel like more of a hybrid class. Having 3 weapons to swap between, the Deadeye is considered to be one of the hardest classes in the game to play, because it can be quite fiddly to manage the weapons, but it really thrives once you get some muscle memory built up. A very combo heavy class, you'll be weaving in and out of combat of close and long range to get your damage off effectively, but a master of a Deadeye has the potential to dominate the arena by dishing out huge damage while also being very hard to catch and can outplay a lot of classes. Putting in the time to learn the class can be hard, but super rewarding with the ability to kite a lot of the slower classes like Berserkers and Gunlancers. You can turn their engages around and make them feel helpless while you dish out your huge damage. A Deadeye would be perfect for someone who doesn't mind a high learning curve and wants access to a lot of skills, giving you more than one thing you can do in any given situation, which puts a lot of personal flair on the class depending on who is controlling them. In summary, a hybrid short and long range class, lots of super armors but squishy, free weapons to manage, a very hard class to master, lots of outplay potential, and extreme mobility. Next up, we have the Gunslinger. Now, this is the female version of the Deadeye, having many of the same skills, but does have a slightly different feel and a few differences in her kit and a different ultimate. To keep things simple, the Gunslinger is generally considered to have better rifle skills and better at fighting range classes, where the Deadeye has better shotgun skills and better melee contest, making it better at fighting melee classes. Both of these classes are very strong in PvP, but I would say to be patient with your learning with them, and remember they are very squishy too. To keep it simple, if you want a super mobile hybrid style class with great carry potential and excellent range skills, but a hard class to master, then Gunslinger could be for you. In summary, better rifle skills than the Deadeye, but not as good melee contest, hybrid short and long range class, lots of super armors but squishy, free weapons to manage, a very hard class to master, and extreme mobility. The next of the gunners, we have the Artillerist. Now, this is the tankiest of all the ranged classes, a slower and very defensive class in PvP. The Artillerist thrives when not engaging, as he has very low mobility. The class also has the highest damage combo in the game in PvP, and if he catches you with this wombo combo, you can be sure to lose a huge chunk of your health and feel absolutely helpless, as you can't get out of it without help from your teammates. Because of this, he's also considered to be one of the best noob killers of the game, because you can dominate games if you keep catching people with this combo, and he also has one of the highest PvP DPS potentials out of all the classes. Being a defensive class, he has access to a shield, which, like the Destroyer, gives the Artillerist the ability to be immune to knockdowns for 8 seconds, meaning he can only be stopped by hard CC unless the shield is broken. So if you want a defensive class with short to medium range, a few super armors, don't mind low mobility, want access to an epic combo, and want one of the highest DPS potential classes in PvP in the game, then the Artillerist might just be for you. In summary, a very defensive class, short to medium range, low mobility, tankiest of all the ranged classes, a massive wombo combo, he can self-shield, and has huge damage potential. Next up, we have the Sharpshooter. Now, this is very much a ranged enabler class in PvP, but can be a bit inconsistent due to the reliance on critical hits to get off your massive damage, which is a bit RNG. There are also two current meta builds for the game, one that uses a stealth mechanic that allows you to go invisible and catch your enemies off guard, but you can forego this to be able to have more damage. The Sharpshooter has a massive hard CC from their Claymore skill, which can be very hard to dodge, allowing you to get off a hard CC and interrupt players quite easily, especially if you're invisible, allowing you to set up some good damage. Having a good amount of mobility, you'll also be focusing on trying to land your snipe skill, which actually zooms your camera out a little bit, giving you fantastic vision and massive damage if you crit, while trying to stay at distance most of the time. Now, while you are quite squishy and you have to be careful if you get caught, you do have access to some nice ranged knockups, which can allow you and your team to get some nice damage from your catches. So if you want a class with fantastic range, the ability to go invisible, but also want a bit of a gambler with your damage from trying to land your critical hits with snipe, then this class might just be for you. In summary, a ranged enabler class, RNG crit based for DPS, good mobility, a stealth mechanic, a squishy class, and good CC options. Last up for the gunners, we have the Scouter. Now, this is potentially one of the hardest classes to play due to having to micromanage your drone's positioning. The class does offer a very safe playstyle, however, when done well, because of the fact that you can send your drone in and attack from very safe distances. Important to note though that this class will not be available at launch for EU and NA at the time of making this video. The ability to not have to commit too hard has made the Scouter quite a formidable force in PvP, and it performs very well in both Korea and Russian versions of the game. You do have some close range skills too, and lowish cooldowns, while also being quite mobile, which allows you to keep your opponents at distance while also being able to protect yourself at short range. The class does suffer from not having too many super armors, so you'll be focusing more on invading the rushdown classes while trying to position your drone correctly to set up your combos, so bear that in mind. And similar to the Shadowhunter's transformation identity, the Scouter has the ability to go into an Iron Man mode, which will give you a great shield in PvP, as well as give you full stagger immunity, making him very dangerous in this form. You will, however, lose form if either the time runs out or your shield gets broken, so be aware of that. that. In summary, a harder class to play, it's not going to be out at EU and NA launch, can be very safe to play, has few super armors, high mobility, and very successful in other servers for PvP. Moving on to the mages, we have the Summoner. Now in PvP, the Summoner has arguably the highest damage potential in the whole game. With your huge AoEs, she is one of the easiest classes to hit multiple people with her skills, skyrocketing her damage. While she has amazing range and huge hitboxes, she does suffer from a lack of super armors and also extremely low mobility, so can struggle against some of the rushdown DPS classes, and it might be important to use your pings to ask for help if you get caught out. If she's left to free cast though, you can expect to get lots of kills with a Summoner and see massive numbers at the post-match screen. As well as this, you have your pets, which can be very useful to CC people in PvP, and you can also micromanage them with your shift key, which is important for high-end play, and you also have access to a self shield. As well as this, she's also considered by a lot of people to be one of the easier classes in the game to play and to learn and to get your damage out. So if you don't mind the lack of mobility and super armors, but want to try and hit some insanely high DPS numbers, then Summoner might just be the class for you. In summary, highest DPS potential in the arena, massive AoEs, very low mobility, she can self shield, and pets, which you can micromanage. Next up we have the Bard. Now being a true support class, the Bard is often considered S-class in PvP because of her shields, heals, and buffs like Team CC immunity and damage reduction, which is extremely impactful in PvP. While having some of the lowest defense values in the game and being a backline support, making her extremely squishy, her access to damage reduction and shields can actually make her quite tanky. As opposed to her aggressive counterpart, the Paladin, Bards often have very low damage in games and thrive much more off being a team enabler, of which she does extremely well at it. As well as this, the Bard also has a good amount of super armors in her kit, making her hard to pin down even though she has low mobility. So if you don't mind not being top of the DPS table and also like a more passive backline support role, then you can't go wrong with a Bard. In summary, very impactful support skills, single stack Team CC immunity buff, passive backline playstyle, a good amount of super armors, low mobility but surprisingly tanky. Next up is the Sorceress. Now in PvP, the Sorceress is more of a pure ranged enabler with lots of CC, setting up plays for her and her team. She does a lot of knockdowns and can be very good at getting catches. Important to note, however, she will not be out at launch for EU and NA release at time of making this video. Like the Battlemaster, she doesn't really have much burst damage, but more that her skills just do good damage across the board, which really adds up over a match. Being a pure ranged class, she has very little in terms of mobility and super armors, so once you've used your teleport from your identity, you only have your spacebar dash left, making her susceptible to rushdown DPS classes. Her strength, however, is her massive range, allowing her to hang back and play safe and out of sight. So if you don't mind the low mobility and lack of super armors and want a class that can really enable your team and get a lot of catches from huge distance, then this might just be the class for you. In summary, not out at launch for EU and NA, a long range enabler, good at getting catches, low mobility, few super armors, and susceptible to rushdown classes. The last of the mages is the Arcana. Now this is an interesting class in the way that she's a bit of a gambler, and because of the way that her identity works, getting buff cards randomly means a lot of inconsistency, which can really make her harder to play than others. Important though that she will not be available at launch for EU and NA at the time of making this video. Now if you do get one of her high damage buffing cards, then her DPS in the arena can be absolutely insane. So if the stars align correctly, you can actually one combo a class from full HP to dead, which no other class can do. She also is a long and short range caster class with her meta build, meaning that you'll be weaving in and out of combat as her burst damage comes a lot from her shorter range skills. Like the Hawkeye, she is crit dependent class due to her extra crit damage, but actually has some really good range, big AoE CCs, as well as being decently mobile. So if you don't mind a reasonably squishy caster class with some RNG elements, then Arcana could be for you. In summary, not out at launch for EU and NA, an RNG gambler class, short and long range skills, big AoE CCs, crit dependent and reasonably mobile. Moving on to the Assassins, the Deathblade in PvP is often referred to as A or S tier, depending on who you ask, a melee rushdown class that's quite beginner friendly due to having a lot of super armors on your skills. They can be a very hard class to deal with because of that. It's a class that does very well defensively because of her lingering skills, but also does very good offensively because of her fast engages and great mobility. She also has one of the highest burst damage windows in the arena, especially when you have your identity buff on. As well as this, she has a lot of knockdown skills to keep CCing your opponents, and these also have quite big hitboxes, making her a great jeweler as well. I believe Deathblade will sit very well with a lot of players in PvP and has the potential to carry games very well while being not too difficult to pick up, which makes her formidable in PvP. Now, in summary, she's a melee rushdown class, beginner friendly, lots of super armors, big hitboxes, great burst damage, great mobility, and a great jeweler. Next up, we have the Shadow Hunter. Now, this is a class that feels very useful all of the time due to the fact that she's a hybrid class and has access to a lot of range CC skills as well as range damage skills, and can jump in for melee as well. Because of the range skills, she is fantastic at peeling for a team and also at getting catches and setting up for your melee damage burst skills as well. Being an assassin, she also has great mobility in the arena and also has quick engages too. Also, like the Scouter, when she transforms into demon form, not only is she very dangerous with high damage, but she also becomes completely stagger immune and faster, making her really fun and engaging to play. However, with all this, she doesn't have access to a lot of super armors, so if you do get caught out, she can be punished quite hard. In summary, a hybrid ranged and melee class, good range CC, great at peeling, good mobility, quick engages, very dangerous and stagger immune in demon form, but with a lack of super armors. Now, the last class we have is the Reaper, a melee DPS that has access to a ton of mobility as well as a stealth mechanic. She's the closest class to a true rogue in the game. Important to note, however, she will not be out at launch for EU and NA at the time of making this video. She's a super engaging class and has some great super armors and hard stagger immunity on a lot of her skills too, on top of her mobility, which means she has the potential to outplay pretty much any other class in the game if you're good enough, and always has a tool to get away or to dodge. Because of her mobility though, she is arguably the squishiest class in the game, meaning that when she does get caught out, she can be bursted down very quickly. She doesn't have super high damage on her skills like the Blade does, so there is a lot of in and out to her playstyle that accompanies the Reaper to chip down your opponents, but she does have a lot of knockdowns, making her feel more like an enabler class. Now, in summary, she's not out at launch for EU and NA, a pure melee DPS class, extreme mobility and outplay potential, a stealth mechanic, good super armors and stagger immunity, but potentially the squishiest class in the game. Okay guys, if you liked the video, remember to give it a like and subscribe, the bell notification turned on, and remember I do also stream right here on the YouTube channel as well as on Twitch, and the link for that will be in the description below, as well as the link for our community Discord server and the guild that we're making for EU at release. So if you fancy joining any of that, come and join the Discord server. And a massive special thank you to everyone who submitted footage for this video. I really can't thank you enough. It's really nice to get the community involved, and links for anyone will be in the description down below as well. But until the next one guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you very soon. Cheers now.